Leave meeting.
All right. Well, I have no idea if anyone will watch this, but if they do, welcome to the post-draft recap podcast.
For the
This
I
is
Love TDs League.
I love
Correct.
big ass TDs.
I love big ass TDs.
this is the first of hopefully more than one podcast that we do throughout the season and beyond.
Maybe like a quarter podcast, like each quarter. First
Yeah.
quarter. I guess it's not 16 weeks anymore, but we'll figure it out.
I'm Nick Greiner. I'm joined here by Colin Hampton and Vincent Crane. So boys, any overall opening impressions of how the draft went? Expansion to 12 teams this year in the league. What do you think?
Definitely excited about the expansion of 12 teams. I think that'll provide some competition and parity to the league, especially because it seems like everyone's really gearing up and ready for this year.
Yep.
I also definitely am a major proponent of this unlimited time per pick. I think it's the best way to suit everybody. Everyone's got a different schedule, so it's hard to get everyone in on one night. It might be frustrating when the guy before you isn't taking your pick, but for the most part, I would say that this unlimited time per pick is like the way going forward and my particular favorite way to draft.
Yeah. The jump from 10 to 12 league or 10 to 12 teams is interesting too. It totally changes the strategies, particularly like when you take quarterbacks and the extra flex player is interesting too. You see like it allows for more like diversity of strategy for people. So you can see which strategies are more effective for some folks and others. Sometimes you take questionable people at number 2 overall. So,
let's get into some of those strategies. Let's talk team by team here. I'm just going to go left to right on the big draft board, if that works for you all. So I think Skip's team is first up for review here. What do y'all make of this Skip squad?
Just because it's my team, I'll just say my quick thoughts. I'm very confident with my team. I'm happy the way I drafted. I'm happy the way that I adapted throughout the draft. Usually I feel like there's a lot of pressure on the number 1 pick, and then you don't get another pick for 20 something more picks. So it's not exactly like you obviously want the first pick, but it's not exactly an easy place to draft. And the thing that stands out to me the most is my tight end. All my notes say for my team is tight end worried. And I went with a guy who's proven himself in the past, kind of been a reliable guy, but now he's with the GOAT. So I'm kind of expecting production rather than hoping for it. So I'm a little worried about my tight end, but for the most part, I think everything else I'm happy with.
Yeah. I see Skip's team and I just see balance. Like, a lot of people, I think with the way that the draft kind of fell, like particularly with the quarterback pick, like you get balance with running back. You got running back depth, even at RB3 with Elijah Mitchell, who's probably going to start week 1. Definitely. He's expected to get most of the carries. And even all the way down to like wide receiver 4, Darnell Mooney, he's the wide receiver 1 in Chicago. So you get like solid depth there. So I think that's important, especially in a 12-team league where you see some of these other teams and there's a big drop off in one position. So depth is important. I think you can make up for the tight end weakness maybe because he's going to get a lot of volume. I think too. There's going to be a lot of looks.
Well, Cameron Brate's still there, but since Brady's been there, Cameron Brate hasn't been at all like a target at all. So I'm hoping Kyle Rudolph can kind of fill a void. He's not Gronk. I'm not saying that, but I think he'll be all right.
You have trade too, if you want to get that. Yeah.
And I think it's nice that you were able to pick up your handcuff in round 10. You didn't have to like reach for him, but you were still able to protect that number 1 overall pick in case anything happens to Taylor. Sure. I think your season will hinge on if you have to make a change at quarterback or tight end, like who's available and what does it cost you to get that? I'm interested to see, does the 3 defenses, cost you a quarterback or a tight end that you end up needing later this season? Or does that play of having the defenses to play off of each week end up working out?
The only thing I'll say to that is there's a lot of quarterbacks that are free agents right now. So obviously Dak has proven himself and I've considered the possibility of him being out, but like, I'm not expecting that. So unless I need a quarterback on my roster, I'm going to stick with the one,
Yeah. All right. So let's move on to team 2, Willie Styles, 93. My overall thought on Willie's team was, I kept waiting for him to take a running back. And eventually I was wondering if he knew that running back was a position you could be drafting. But he got Tony Pollard, which personally, as when we get to my team, I'll mention that again, that I was very frustrated that he took Tony. I was hoping that he would fall one more round to me. But I think that's a good pickup. I think Tony's going to probably be at least in a work share with Zeke this season, if not, supplant Zeke at some point this season.
Yeah.
So he's team aired out. His team is going to be coached by Mike Leach, and he's going to live and die by the pass.
Yeah. I mean, interesting. I mean, got to talk about Tyreek Hill going 102. He might not have even been on people's top 12 picks in some leagues, maybe not even top 15, but maybe he sees something in Tyreek in that Miami offense. He's a big Miami fan. I like the Kyle Pitts pick. I think, don't know if I love the Tyreek Hill pick, but I like the Kyle Pitts pick in round 3. He had a different strategy. Not a lot of, every single running back he has is in a timeshare in some capacity. So, just a very different strategy. But he does have a lot of guys who can catch the rock. Jerry Jeudy goes off this year. I think that could be a really good pick in round 5. Adam Thielen, kind of a touchdown guy. So, I think he starts with a lower floor. He has a little bit of a possibility for higher ceiling, but I think he has a little bit of work to do.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, obviously the thing that stands out is no running backs. Like your number one running back is the backup in a team, so that's definitely the first impression. Also, I believe it's the riskiest team. Like there's so much risk there that it's hard to see an upside. And opposite of my team, he's going to expect his quarterback and his tight end to carry the team,
Yeah.
So it's the team I'm most worried about. But there's potential there. I'm not saying it's a foregone conclusion by any means. I mean, if you look at his receivers, you got to kind of scroll down and you get Chase Claypool and Tyler Boyd there. So he's got value from his first pick to his last pick, but overall it's kind of an eye opener for sure.
Yeah.
How about Team Josh? Thoughts on Team Josh?
Originally, I wasn't a huge fan of his first 3 or 4 rounds, but then as he kept drafting, he reached on a couple guys that I liked. I wasn't, Derrick Henry is obviously a little bit, it's weird to say as a 27, 28-year-old that he's reaching, old age. He's still obviously really good when he plays. I didn't like it at first, but then as he drafted more, his team got really deep and really well-rounded. You get Robert Woods in the 9th round, Darrell Henderson, who might start week 1. I like Jahan Dotson. I love that pick. David Njoku. I like the Dalton Schultz pick. Dameon Pierce, obviously people probably were not happy when they saw him go in the 6th round. I thought they could wait on him, but he got his guys. He wasn't afraid to reach for those dudes. So I didn't like it at first, or I didn't love it at first, but then I saw it and I was like, when the draft was done, I was like, this is one of the more well-rounded teams. I think got Lamar. I think I like the depth that he secured in the later rounds.
I understand where you're coming from there, but what I wrote down for my notes might be a little harsh, is I put it's a hype team.
Yeah.
A lot of names, not a lot of confidence.
Yeah.
So obviously those are Derrick Henry, Mike Evans, Keenan Allen, Josh Jacobs, Lamar Jackson. You think, wow, that's a team right there. But are each of one of those people going to be able to get it done this season specifically? Mm-hmm. Derrick Henry, like you said, not old, but he's been through a lot. He's gotten 400 plus carries a year, some crazy, ridiculous thing. Mike Evans, obviously that offense and the GOAT, but there's a lot of weapons there now. So he might just, he might transition just to being a red zone threat rather than being the number one. Keenan Allen also is on the other side of the hump. I'm not sure his exact age, but I believe he's, not exactly young and spry. Josh
a lot of guys could fall off. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not trying to bash this team. I like it, but I'm just not confident that it's going to get it done this season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously,
you could say this about a handful of teams, but if those first 3 picks hit, I think this is a championship roster.
Yeah.
This, I really like 4 through 17. And obviously there are some question marks about the guys at the top of this roster, but I play Josh week 1. This is a team I would much rather run into week 8, after there's been some attrition and Derrick Henry's taken some hits and you know, maybe one of those top guys is injured or not performing the way that you expect them to. But week one, I'm very scared of this roster. And if, you know, if they hold up the season, I think this could be a very deep team and a very talented team. But, you know, we'll see. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
All right, on to Doc Wayne. My thoughts here, I think he's got some really sneaky good picks. You know, I like Zamir White in round 13. I think Justin Fields looks a lot better, at least in the preseason, in round 14. He could be a great backup quarterback, you know, if you want to switch him out with Tom Brady a few times this season. Kupp, I mean, if he has another performance like last season, obviously he's a top 4 guy, and that's why he was drafted there. Debo should be big again. Mark Andrews. I mean, you look through this list, like if Hall in New York is exactly what people are expecting, I think this is going to be another very tough team to beat.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say, not to spoil one of our later topics, but I would say his 1, 2, 3 punch is as good as any. Cooper Kupp, Debo Samuel, Mark Andrews. That is easily the core of the team. He did well later on after that, but that 1, 2, 3 punch is almost unmatched. And then me, I'm kind of a historian with the game, if you will. I'm a guy who really likes running backs and needs that a strong running back room. And for me, it doesn't do it for me, for Wayne's team at least. Your number 1 running back is a running back on a bad team, and he's a rookie. Risk. That screams risk to me. So I'm not saying it's a bad team by any means, but that Cooper Kupp, Debo Samuel, Mark Andrews will be carrying the team all season.
You know, it's funny that we did, like, you know, Skip at 1, Willie at 2, kind of different strategies. Josh at 3, Wayne at 4, also kind of different strategies, right? Don't love Josh's first 3 picks, kind of love my dad's first 3 picks, right? And then, you know, a lot of guys who were 4 through 17 on Josh's team might be over the hump as far as performance goes. And a lot of guys on Josh's team, it might be a make it or break it year, right? Like, these guys got to hit, you know, Allen Lazard is wide receiver 1 in Green Bay, Devontae Smith, probably going to get better looks with AJ Brown in the mix, and in Philly, J.K. Dobbins is probably going to be the number 1 guy there once he gets healthy. Like, I love the Zamir White pick. That was one of my favorite picks of the whole draft. He's been playing really well in preseason. I think a lot of these guys, to counterbalance Josh's folks who have been good fantasy players in the past, I think if these guys hit, you know, they're kind of on the upswing, with the exception of Tom Brady, right? But you know, a lot of these guys have the ability to kind of have a breakout year. So I think that's what makes his team scary, like Nick said.
Yeah. All right. How about Johnny 3? Thoughts on Johnny 3's squad?
There were a lot of comments in the chat about Johnny 3's draft performance. I don't know if people were just kind of poking fun at him. I think he got value with CMC at the 5th overall pick, right? Like, you don't see that happen very often. I love the receivers. I love the DeAndre Hopkins wide receiver 5. You know, stack good receivers and then wait for DeAndre to come back in week 7 or whenever it is, week 8. And you have, like, those are all, I mean, with the exception of Godwin, you know, wide receiver 1s. I know Waddle might be wide receiver 2, but those are all, you know, in their own right, studs at receiver. I don't know exactly how the running back room is going to play, and I don't love Clyde Edwards-Helaire in any capacity. But if CMC can stay healthy and he has a lot of depth at receiver, you know, remains to be seen. And he got a QB1 super late. So that's a strategy where he waited to stack up on skill position talent. I don't love the Dawson Knox pick, but I guess it's the best that he had at the time. But I think those wide receivers are going to take him to the, a lot deeper than some of the other teams. So
the one thing I put one note next to his name, and that's depth. His top 5 receivers and his top 5 running backs are the deepest in the league, and I don't even think it's close. Mm-hmm. Obviously, because he took the tight end there, but he waited for the quarterback. His top 5 receiver running backs are the deepest, which kind of puts him in as championship contender. Mm-hmm. The deepest run, like he could go deep because of his depth. Obviously, the DeAndre Hopkins is his wide receiver 5. And he's going to miss the first 4 games, I believe. But imagine when he comes back, who do you start between those 5 receivers? He's going to give himself a good problem to have. And you can say the same thing about his running backs. So for me, Johnny 3's got the deepest team.
Yeah.
My note for Johnny's team is hold your breath, because I feel like this is a team that if they stay together and if this roster looks pretty similar at the end of the season as it does now, this is going to be a really good team. But, you know, you worry about Glass McCaffrey there even if he is the 5th overall pick, you know, he has a history of injuries. Edwards-Helaire, you know, he can be really good and he can not perform certain weeks. You know, Brian Robinson just got shot. Who knows what he's going to be when he comes back? You know, Kirk Cousins, I mean, he's a good player, but you've got one quarterback on the roster and he was taken in the 13th round. That could be a big weakness on the roster. So, you know, we'll see. I think if Johnny's team looks very similar at the end of the season, he's had a very good year.
Yeah. I think Johnny actually, interestingly enough, was somebody who came into the draft with a strategy and just stuck to his guns. And I think he all along knew he was going to take but a quarterback super late as a QB1.
Yeah.
So I think he was one of the few folks who maybe he rolled the punches when he could, you know, got CMC at 5, but like, I think he knew all along in my mind that this is what he wanted to do.
Yeah. I think Johnny's very happy with his team.
Mm-hmm.
All right. How about Eric's team?
Eric, I have 2 things. I have value and depth. So each pick that I noticed was great value where they found him. I mean, look at Kareem Hunt in the 8th. I know, you know, he wants out of Cleveland, but like, that's not going to take away from his talent and from what they can do with that double, you know, 2-headed running back system there. You got Brandon Ayuk after that. Hunter Henry's his tight end 1 in the 11th round. Like, every single one of his picks was a great value pick where he found him. Justin Herbert was the 3rd quarterback taken.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's where he was always going to go. But I think his value is there and the balance is there as well. Solid across the board. So very, very confident with his team. Not much else other than that, like great value, great balance.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Cam.
Oh yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I didn't love the Aaron Jones pick in the 2nd round, but then I saw Kareem Hunt. To piggyback off what Colin said, the demanded trade from Kareem Hunt could actually benefit him in the future if he does get traded. I definitely think he's RB1 talent on another team, right? So that could be a value pick. And Aaron Jones could, if he remains healthy, you know, he's a big focal point on offense now with Devontae Adams gone. So I got to play Eric week 1. I like the Brandon Ayuk pick. I think he's the highest projected point scorer in the first week. So I'm a little bit nervous about that. But yeah, I think he has a lot of guys who can hit if some of the guys above him don't. Like, I want to see how Cortland Sutton plays in the Denver offense. Where does he fit with Russell Wilson? Gabe Davis, you know, obviously make or break year for him after the playoffs last year. If those guys can hit, I think he's going to be a really scary team down the line.
Yeah, I wrote down known commodities. I feel like he's got a lot of players who are in their prime. You kind of know what you're expecting from them. I don't feel like there's a lot of players on this roster who are going to outperform where they were drafted, but I don't think there's going to be a lot of regrets either. I feel like this was a lot of like solid players drafted kind of where you would think that they would go. I really like the Sutton pick in the 5th round. I think he's going to have a huge year in Denver. That might be the lone exception in terms of upside there. So I feel like you'll see Eric being a tough out for sure.
For sure.
All right. Team Vincent Crane.
Yeah, I can go first. I loved the beginning of the draft. I liked up through and we'll talk about this later, but up through like round 4, I was really happy with the draft. I liked the Najee Harris, Saquon. There's a strategy that I was looking at before. It was like the moat strategy, right? Where like, can you build the biggest moat around your players, right? I don't think that there's anybody vying for time in Pittsburgh, the backfield, right? Nobody else is really vying for time in New York backfield. I like the 1-2 punch with Saquon and Najee. If they can stay healthy, that'll be great. The turning point, I'll talk about this later with the trade with Nick and Troy, but I want to see how the Allen Robinson, Jalen Hurts pieces fit together. And then I'm glad I got AJ Dillon. I like that. I like Cole Kmet. I'm glad I could supplant George Kittle with that. I don't love the running back depth because I think I waited a little while after the Najee Harris, Saquon picks. So that'll be the biggest question mark, I think, for my team.
Yeah, I feel like your rounds 9 through 11 will be what determines the success of this roster. I think Drake London is a really talented, potentially WR1 if he can show it on the field. AJ Dillon, he's the other half of that monster with Aaron Jones that we were just talking about. He's going to produce. And Cole Kmet, I think we'll talk about this later as well, but is one of my sleeper picks of the draft. I think he's probably going to be one of the bigger beneficiaries of the new scheme that they're running in Chicago this year. So I agree. I think if Saquon stays healthy and those guys 9 through 11, produce and Gainwell can supplant Miles Sanders, I feel like you've got a really talented team.
Yeah, I agree with everything you both said. Personal opinion, obviously that's why I'm saying it, but I don't like the middle picks. So if I was in the middle of each round, I'm scared of what to do, because like it's a very challenging spot to be in. So with that being said, I think you made the most of being a middle round pick. Like you did what you could with what you had and you made the most of it. There's still a decent amount of risk, but I'm very much confident with each one of these players and where they're at in their respective teams. The risk part, I mean, you have Rashad Bateman, who's I guess he's not a rookie anymore, but Drake London,
right,
as your wide receiver 4. That's a risk. He's a rookie, but like he's your wide receiver 4 and he's bound to do well. With him and Kyle Pitts, that's a crazy team, and they're gonna be passing a lot. So yeah, overall thoughts, I'm still confident, but there is risk. So like, I don't know how to summarize, but basically like you made the most of what you could have done. There's only so much you can do with a middle round pick. And I think that's as good as it gets for where you were at.
Yeah.
All right. We'll talk about my team. I can lead off here with my thoughts. I like what I did, except potentially my wide receivers. I feel like I need my running backs to hang on one more season. We talked about Zeke might regress. I mean, that's why he was available in the 4th round. Gibson, no one seems to like him in Washington, but his backup is out for at least 4 games. So hopefully he can produce through at least the beginning part of the season. I think Scary Terry will be fine in Washington. I think Brandon Cooks can at least put up some points as WR1 in Houston. I really, really need someone like Burks, Olave, or McKenzie to step forward and like be my WR3. If they don't, if those guys take a while to get going, and Burks and Olave are rookies, if neither one of them produces at the level that I'm hoping that they will, then it might be a long season for me. But I'm hoping that one of those guys can really break out.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment of your own team. Obviously, everyone has their own personal biases, but I still think looking at your team, it's solid all around, and there's a high floor everywhere. Like no one. It's hard to believe that anyone on your entire roster is going to absolutely tank. I mean, maybe Sony Michel, but he was your last pick. He was not even on a roster maybe a few days ago when you made that, or like the day before you made that pick, he wasn't even on a roster. But I'm not really going to fixate on your last pick. I do think there's a high floor everywhere, and that's an equation for success.
I think Nick's team is. I think Nick came in with a certain strategy, right, and he rolled the punches, right? So like, I don't think he expected Zeke to fall to him in the 4th round. I definitely don't think he expected Antonio Gibson to fall to him in the 7th round, right? So I think he did a good job of like getting his home run hitters and Eckler and Chubb, Scary Terry, right? He made moves with the trade. I love the Russell Wilson pick. Brandon Cooks is a super high floor guy, and I think he, went for. I also the Pat Freiermuth pick too. I think he's gonna surprise a lot of people this year. And then I also like the Treylon Burks, Chris Olave, like take a chance on a rookie, right? In high powered offenses who are going to get a lot of looks. So I think, you had a couple different strategies at play here. It wasn't just like, I'm going after these specific people, and if I don't get them, then I move to somebody else. Like, I think you had people you wanted, you accepted what fell to you, which was, really value picks. And then also, took a shot on some people who could really break out in the rookie year.
Yeah, I can't believe I didn't mention the trade. I definitely think it worked out for the both of you, but because we're talking about Nick's team, you got everybody you had wanted. Like, you made the trade, and each one of those picks is a very great pick. And I might have to spoil something, but I think the best pick in the draft was the Russell Wilson. And maybe it's because I wanted him, but like, I think it's about to be Russell Wilson's year. So that's my favorite pick in the entire draft, and it happens to be on your team. So a little bit jealous there.
I will take it. All right, I'll lead off here as well on Alex's team. This is team tight end for sure. He's got 4 of them. So if anyone has a tight end injury, you know who to call. I think this is an interesting move. I feel like tight ends continue to grow in their importance in the league. And, you've seen that like the tight end position is more of a pass catcher than a blocker these days. And especially like the 4 guys he got are all known as like receivers. So if his plan is to like, play that matchup and have a couple of flexes that are tight ends and, hope that they stay healthy more than running backs do and some wide receivers do, I think this could be an okay strategy. I didn't love the value of some of the picks, but we'll see. I think Alex's team has potential as a like contrarian strategy here, relative to some of the other teams.
Yeah, I have a very similar take. Definitely different words, but what I wrote was prove me wrong. Like, I'm skeptical. I don't agree with a lot of what he did when he did it. But I would like to see him prove me wrong, like Tyler Lockett down there in 10. I'm not exactly sure why he fell so far. I understand that Russell Wilson's not there anymore, but like he's talented and he's productive. So I don't know. I just think that I'm not on board yet, but I would love to see him prove me wrong over the course of the season.
Yeah, I see some similarities here between Alex's team and Josh's team, actually. I think where we thought that Josh's team might be, guys who've been there before, and this might be the last year before they fall off. I think Alex's team is actually 1 year maybe past that, with the exception of the tight end mix. We got to see what happens with Amari Cooper. He's been there before. How can he do it with Jacoby Brissett? Melvin Gordon, I feel like Melvin Gordon might be at that point with Javonte Williams in the mix, but he's always a TD vulture. I think it really, depends on what happens. He took the Buffalo Bills also really early too. I think that was the first defense off the board for the next, there wasn't one taken for the next 2 rounds. So that was an interesting strategy. I think he was definitely the contrarian strategy. We're just like, don't go, they zig, I zag. And, that could end up reaping benefits in the future, but I think he needs to make up with it with some waiver wire depth if some pieces go awry.
All right, over to Jason, who wants to touch on Jason's team.
I think we all have the same note about the Raiders stack. I didn't even notice it, but obviously Devontae, Darren, and Derek. Wow, what a stack there. But then also his rookies. He's got a lot of faith in rookies. George Pickens.
Oh yeah.
Khalil Herbert, Jameson Williams. So that's if those rookies hit, he could have a very like impactful season. I guess his running backs aren't crazy strong. His running back 3 is a backup who only plays when Dalvin Cook plays or doesn't play. But I think that could be a sneaky good team. And definitely the things that pop out to me is the Raiders are going to be carrying his team. And then the rookies, if they show up or not, will determine if it's make or break.
Yeah. Jason's a gamer. I mean, every year we play with him, he's a game. He plays the game to win, right? And I think he had the strategy all along. I like the Alvin Kamara pick. James Conner's a touchdown scorer, right? I love the George Pickens pick. I was wishing he was going to fall to me in a later round, but he went up, got this guy. Can't say much else about that. And Michael Thomas could pop off. I think Jason's a gamer in every sense of the word, and Stack is a representative of that.
Yeah, I really like that Pickens pick. And I was curious to see when the trade went through with Skip, who Jason was targeting there at the beginning of the 15th round. And I think Williams is a very sneaky pick, someone who obviously is going to be stashed on the bench for a while, but when he comes back, might be the best rookie wide receiver. So that'll be interesting to see. All right, over to Rob Masarofo.
I wrote sneaky. It doesn't look on paper, it's not like a big hitter. Nothing wows you, but like he could go deep. I like the Garrett Wilson pick. I tend to stay away from bad teams, but when they're passing a lot and you got a talented guy like Garrett Wilson, like he could easily be a top 3 round pick next year. He could have like at one of those crazy rookie years. Julio Jones later in the draft. I just think it's sneaky good. It doesn't look great on paper, but he'll be in every matchup. He'll be in every game, and we could see him go far.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a very high upside team. You know, if Dalvin can stay healthy, which is always a question mark, if ETN can perform in the Jacksonville offense, you know, really his first season, even though he's not a rookie. You know, Juju Smith-Schuster in a new location, Jones in a new location, Wilson obviously is a rookie in a new location, Watkins in a new location. You know, if a lot of these guys turn into, you know, fantasy stars, then this is going to be a really good team. Just a lot of question marks. You know, this will be one of the most fascinating teams to see develop throughout the season.
Yeah, I think this team is similar to Nick's in a couple of ways, right? Like I think that you know, he kind of had a strategy going in and he rolled with the punches as the picks kind of fell. I like the ETN pick. I love Juju in Casey's offense. I don't love the Devin Singletary, Julio Jones pick. Rob is one of the only teams who also picked 2 kickers, I think. So, you know, we'll see. I mean, it was the second to last pick in the draft, but he also got a kicker in the 11th round, right? So a couple picks I don't like here. I like Sammy Watkins in Green Bay. He might show out as the number 1 or number 2 guy. Dallas Goedert, love the pick. But, you know, I think just a matter of, you know, how do these folks kind of fall? And he definitely had his own strategy, which I think he kind of wanted to flex, and we'll see how that pays off.
All right, I'll go first on Troy's team. I called Troy's team buy high. I feel like this is a lot of guys who are expected to do really well this season. A couple of them I'm expecting a little bit of regression from, like Jamar Chase. I think, you know, he's probably going to get a lot more attention this year. Does that impact Joe Burrow as well? Maybe. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown in Detroit is one of his better picks. I think he's going to have a hell of a year. Akers seems to have difficulty staying healthy. You know, I think Kadarius Toney is like wide receiver 1, but he went in the 10th round. I mean, that tells you something about like the Giants offense and what's expected of him. So we'll see. I mean, I feel like this is a team that when you look at it on paper, you're like, damn, that's a really good team. And they've just got to perform the way that, you know, a lot of people are thinking about them. There's reasons why some people are not as high on these players coming into this season as they might have been last season.
Yeah, I think his team is basically Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, and then if you know that's his team, and then if everyone else can step up, then he'll have a good team. You know, but Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase will be carrying this team. That's for sure. It's whether or not the rest. I mean, DeAndre Swift, Cam Akers, and Damian Harris all have question marks next to them for different reasons. But if that's your 1, 2, 3 running back, you have a lot of faith in those 3 guys specifically.
Yeah.
And so it's Jamar and Joe. And then if everyone else can step up, will be the make or break.
Yeah. There's a lot of reasons to like those first 3 picks, a lot of brand name value there. I personally thought Troy had one of the better drafts. I liked the trade. I think Nick and Troy benefited from the trade. I'll speak a little bit more later about the Joe Burrow, Amon-Ra St. Brown trade. But I like, you know, I think a lot of the top 4 picks that he had, you know, really high upside, but they also have question marks too. And if they perform at the question mark level, like Mike Williams is probably due for regression this year. You know, maybe he'll have to rely a little bit more on that Bengals stack. But I like Troy's one of my favorite teams in the draft so far.
So overall throughout the draft, who did you think was the most underrated pick, or what pick are you sitting there looking at going, man, that was really good value based on where they were picked?
Yeah, I mean, I already said it when I spoke about your team, Nick, was Russell Wilson. It could be just because I wanted him so badly, or because I do think that him in a new offense, a new environment, with the weapons he has and that ownership, and just like the whole Broncos organization with Russell, like I think it's a fantastic fit. And the fact that you got him is like, I keep looking at Russell Wilson saying he should be on my team. But then other than that one, I would say the Michael Thomas pick. I think he's one of the most talented receivers in the NFL. Talent doesn't always equate to production, but as far as Michael Thomas goes in the 5th round, that's insane. Like he should be at the top of he should be a round 1 receiver. I know that's with Drew Brees, a different story now, but I think that's one of the most underrated picks. And then I think I had a few more later ones, but we can go to yours, Cam, or whoever's next, and then I'll consider some more.
I think in terms of value, you got to look at Zeke in the 4th, and then Antonio Gibson in the 7th. A lot of people were kind of watching Antonio Gibson fall. I'm getting some thumbs up from Sean over here. You don't get much better value at your running back 3 and 4 than that. Like that's great value. I want to say underrated pick. Going back to my dad's team, I love the Zamir White pick. I don't think Josh Jacobs is long for to be a starter in Las Vegas through the end of the year, potentially. I think, but Zamir White has definitely, made his case to be the next guy up in Las Vegas. And I think that happens this year.
Yeah, I talked about a few, the Damian Pierce pick in the 6th round, Komet in the 14th, Sutton in the 5th. The other one that is really, really a sleeper, I think, is Rob's pick of Devonta Foreman in the 16th round. He's probably the handcuff to McCaffrey. He's competing with Hubbard, but in the preseason, at least, they were giving Foreman a lot of work, at the goal line. He's probably RB2 in Carolina, and McCaffrey is, no guarantee to stay healthy. So in the 16th round to pick up a guy who, is a coin flip to be a starting running back is a pretty good value pick. So that was the only other one that I had listed.
I along those same lines, but on a different team, would be Mark Ingram back on the Saints. Kamara goes down. Let me see who the team is, but I mean, it's Mark Ingram, right?
Jason's got Kamara too.
Yep.
Dwayne Washington's their RB3. So that Mark Ingram pick in the 14th round by Jason is fantastic. I don't want to toot my own horn, but I love my Russell Gage pick. Like it kind of like when the trade happened, I was like, whatever, this is going to be inconsequential. And then I found Russell Gage right there. I'm like, okay, well, Tom Brady wanted him on the Bucs. So if Tom Brady wants him, I want him. And I feel good about that pick. Yeah. But then I agree with all the picks that you guys said as well. Zamir White, some of the later round picks are very good. And to do the exact opposite, I would say the most overrated pick or the worst pick in the entire draft would be Josh picking Trey Sermon, who's not even on an NFL roster right now, but it's okay.
That's what I call value. He's a wild card. You never know where he'll land. I've got 2 questionable picks. We talked about the first one, Tyreek Hill at number 2. I mean, there's every chance that Hill shows out in this offense. They obviously traded a lot to get him, so they're going to feature him. Maybe he turns into a top 5 player this season. But he hasn't shown that he can do it. There were a lot of guys there that I thought would have been a better pick. And then I'll go to Alex's team with the TJ Hawkinson pick in round 7. You've already got the number 1 tight end on your roster, got a lot of holes to fill throughout. To go back to the well on the tight end, I thought was questionable given the guys that you still had available to you there. But, as we talked about, that's Alex's strategy of stacking tight ends. So makes sense for what he was trying to do.
Yeah. I don't love the Justin Tucker pick in the 8th round. I mean, just because he's a good brand name, he's going to get you a lot of points, but he went ahead of people like AJ Dillon, Hunter Renfrow, Kareem Hunt, Rashad Penny, Darnell Mooney. Like, I don't like that pick. I think you could wait. And kickers weren't going until round 11. So he could have sat on that pick a little while, even if he wanted to get his guy. So I think there's question marks surrounding. I like Jason's team. I don't like that pick.
Yeah, I had a few more as well. Obviously the Tyreek pick is the biggest, is like the most obvious one. That's the obvious, what are we thinking? Questionable pick. Then you go to the Kelsey pick in the 1st round. Obviously that's something that Alex does, so it shouldn't be that surprising, but still the fact that he went through with it was, because look at the next 2 picks, Alvin Kamara and Dalvin Cook. I'd rather have either one of those guys over Travis Kelsey. And who's to say that Travis Kelsey wouldn't have been there when he came back around? Right. So definitely questionable there. I have Jerry Jeudy, and I'm trying to think about why I wrote that down because I like that Denver offense. There's a lot of weapons. I'm not sure why I thought that was a questionable pick, but it could just be because it's his 3rd receiver and he still didn't have a running back. I'm more judging his team rather than the pick on that pick. But, obviously the Tucker pick as well. Like what are we doing, Jason? What are we doing? And then the very next pick also with the Buffalo Bills defense, like, has the number 1 defense ever ended up being the number 1 defense? Like, I don't know that, but I mean, especially that high up, 8th round, there's plenty of other stuff you could have done there. And then I already mentioned the Trey Sermon. So a lot of similar picks with our answers there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Both of those guys could have used a better RB3 than what the Buffalo Bills or Tucker can provide. I mean, AJ Dillon, Kareem Hunt, James Robinson, a lot of guys who are still available. We'll see.
Interesting. Yeah.
I want to go through who would you label as your boom or bust team? We kind of talked about this a little bit when we were going through the team by team, but for me, it's Johnny's team. If Glass McCaffrey can stay healthy, If the running back, Robinson, who just got shot, can recover and actually be a factor this season, he's got some really good teams, some really good players on that team. Kirk Cousins needs to perform. He's his only quarterback, was drafted late in 13th. And he has a new coaching staff this year in Minnesota. So I feel like that team has the most question marks and probably the lowest floor and the highest ceiling.
I would say the exact same thing. That is the definition of boomer bust. He could either win the championship or win the ACT award, whatever you want to call it. Like it doesn't really, there's not much explanation. That is the definition of boomer bust team. I wouldn't say it's 50-50. I'd say it's more likely that he's going to boom, but it's still a boomer bust. And then the other team, which I think is another obvious one, would be Willie's. Like,
yeah,
you're expecting it to bust, but it could boom. So those are my two boomer bust.
Yeah. I have Willie's here as well. I also have Jason's team. So, I mean, Jason's, if let's say Derek Carr gets hurt or something happens in the Oakland offense, that stack doesn't look as appetizing now. I think Michael Thomas has a lot of question marks. He could not play again this year for whatever reason, right? George Pickens could end up being the second or third guy there. A lot of the reasons why we like some of these guys are there's reasons why we don't like these guys too. So I think he has the potential to boom or bust too.
And just to speak on Derek Carr real quick, his backup is Jarrett Stidham. So
who played
I don't
well.
know how many starts he has, but he's not terrible, but it's still the same. Like without Derek Carr, what do you expect from that team?
So who do you think is the most intriguing team? Or in other words, is there a team that you're going to be checking out to see how they're performing, week in, week out, besides your own, of course?
Yeah, I would go with No Shirt Hudson, Troy. As I said when we were reviewing his team is Joe Burrow and Jamar. And then if everyone else can step up, I like that team. And so that's the biggest question. That's what I'm going to be watching week in, week out. I know what Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are capable of. I don't know what everyone else on that roster is capable of. So I will be checking in weekly.
I want to see how the pieces on Rob's team will fit. I really want to see how Travis Etienne fits in that offense. If he's going to get as many looks as Doug Peterson says he's going to get. And then Juju. I want to see how Juju, does as the wide receiver one in Kansas City. I'm interested to see some of those pieces. As a whole, Nick's team is very tantalizing to me too. Intriguing with some of the value you got at receiver in the later rounds. I want to see how Treylon and Olave, can work with some of the other, safer, higher floor guys that you have.
Yeah, we talked about the reasons for these in the team by team, but I said Troy and Josh as well. I think both of those teams have a lot of potential to have different kinds of seasons depending on how the guys on those rosters perform. So is there any particular team, at a given position group that you feel like really excelled in the draft, or, a best team at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, et cetera, that, you wanted to highlight for the position group that they've got?
Yeah. So I guess we'll go around with position. So quarterback right off the bat, obviously we know how I feel about Russell Wilson. I can't talk about him enough. So I would say the value at quarterback, it goes to Nick's team, but Willie, I think, has the best two quarterbacks. So
yeah, I agree.
Josh Allen, he was the first quarterback taken, but for the right reasons. And then his backup happens to be an arguable goat. So,
right.
that Willie takes the cake for best quarterback room.
Yeah. I think sleeper for best quarterback, I like Alex's team. I think Trevor Lawrence, the Jaguars are going to be down a lot in a lot of games this year. He's probably going to approach 4,500 passing yards. Maybe, I think he's going to get a lot of trash fantasy points, and obviously Kyler game or two. So I think Trevor Lawrence is going to get a lot of points because they're going to be down a lot, and so I like that pick. I think Trevor Lawrence makes the jump this year.
Yeah, I wonder if Alex put a stipulation in drafting Kyler Murray that he has to do film review each week or not, but we'll see. For running back, I took Skip's team here. I think, obviously when you have the first pick and you take the number one running back, that's a good start. I like Javonte. I like Elijah Mitchell. I really think Cook is going to perform in Buffalo. He's got his handcuff there with Hines if anything happens to Taylor. I feel like top to bottom, that's a very strong running back room. So I went with Skip's team.
Both of you guys I have marked as the two best teams with the deepest running back rosters on the league. I think you guys both had similar strategies going in, albeit in different spots in the draft. But you guys both have the deepest, unquestionably deepest rosters with running backs.
Yeah, I would definitely say it's me and Nico, just because 3 in our first 4 picks are running backs. That alone makes it, gives it that. And then interestingly enough, the next person who took 3 in their first 5 are Rob. And yes, there is risk there because Dalvin's injury prone. Travis Etienne is essentially a redshirt rookie. And then Cordero Patterson's over the 30 hump.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as, 1, 2, 3 running backs, it's got to be me and Nico, and then Rob next, and then kind of everyone else after that.
Yeah.
Yep. How about the wide receiver grouping? Any wide receiver grouping stand out to you?
Yes. And I mentioned this when we did the team by team review. It's got to be Wayne. Wayne with the 1-2 punch. That is insane. Cooper Kupp and Bo Samuel. It does not get better than that. Then I would put Jason's team next because of the pure talent. Devontae Adams, Michael Thomas, George Pickens, the rookie. We'll see what he does. They tend to find good receivers. But then you got Christian Kirk in Jacksonville, pass a lot offense. Michael Gallup in Dallas, pass a lot offense.
Yeah.
Jameson Williams as the rookie. Just an insane overall receiver room. Willie has the deepest receivers, maybe because he has the most receivers, but he's definitely got the deepest. And then Johnny 3 as my long-term favorite for the receiver room.
Yeah. The end of the season, I think I like Johnny. DeAndre Hopkins as a wide receiver 5 is just absolute stupid value. You got Romeo Dubs who might pop in Green Bay too. I like Johnny 3s, and then Troy's. I like Troy. Kadarius Toney in round 10, who could be the wide receiver 1 in New York. I like his receivers a lot too.
Yep, I'm with you guys on all of that. Nothing much to add there. And I assume we're all on the same page that Alex has the best tight end grouping, if not by sheer volume, by quality as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. He's the obvious favorite for best tight end room.
Yep.
Every year.
How about personal regrets? Any personal regrets from how your draft unfolded?
Yeah, so I'll touch on this, and I kind of mentioned this earlier. I want to go back because this played into Nick and Troy's trade. If you go back to round 5, I had texted you guys individually, or in our group, that I was thinking about taking Joe Burrow at that pick, but I saw Allen Robinson had fallen, and I was like, he's a good value. So I ended up not taking Joe Burrow when A-Rob, and then Troy immediately traded up. So I wanted to get that T. Higgins, Joe Burrow stack. I thought Joe Burrow would fall to me for the next round. Troy traded up immediately, grabbed him, and then Troy got the pick, Nick's next pick, which is the one before mine, and he got Amon-Ra St. Brown, who I was also looking at too. So I think a lot of my season I'm going to be looking back at that moment and be looking at the Allen Robinson, Jalen Hurts versus Amon-Ra St. Brown, Joe Burrow combination. I think that's my biggest regret. If I could swap those 2 players for those 2 players, I'd be that cherry on top of my draft.
I hate to break up the cycle we had going, but real quick on the tight ends thing, I just had a few notes. Tight end, obviously Alex has the best tight end room, but I think Willie with Pitts, that's one of the best picks in the entire draft, and I wanted Pitts, so I think Willie's got great just Kyle Pitts and then even Tyler Higbee as backup, and then Wayne's got a sneaky good tight end room with Evan Ingram and Mark Andrews.
Yeah,
I agree with that as well.
But then the personal regret, I've already said it, Russell Wilson. I wanted him. I should have reached for him because I knew I wanted him, but now that I'm looking at it, I would have had to have taken him instead of DK Metcalf. But that's easily my biggest regret is Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I fully expected Tony Pollard to be available in the 7th. And I had kind of penciled in that's where I was probably going to go when it came back to me in the 7th round. And I thought Willie's pick of taking him there at the end of round 6 was really smart. That was a big regret of mine. At no point in the draft was I more frustrated to see a player go off the board than Tony Pollard there at the end of the 6th.
Yeah. I felt the same way with Amon-Ra St. Brown right before the pick of mine as well. And I was in trade talks with Troy too to try to get him on draft day. But interesting. Yeah.
And what was your favorite moment overall of the draft?
At the end there, when we had a chat between the 3 of us and Jason, that was pretty cool. Just because I've never been in a voice chat during a draft, so that was just a fun little thing. And anytime I noticed that there was more than like 3 or 4 green dots in the lobby, made me just personally feel good. Like, oh, people are locked in right now. They're tuning in to see what's going on, who's going next. I like the trade talks whenever we just hopped on 2 phone calls about, pick trading, and that's just a cool moment to connect and hear each other's voice, because, whatever.
Yeah.
And then the overall banter in the text, people just talking shit the whole time. I'm here for it every day of the week.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, I love the voice chat moment. That was great. And then I think it helped that Willie took Tyreek second overall, because that really started the energy of the conversation and the chat. So I like I like the conversation that pick particularly started.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like when the draft starts out with a lot of people going at their average draft position, then you're like, okay, it's just kind of like a ho-hum draft. But when you see Tyreek come off the board too, I feel like people like start to scramble and they're like questioning their own notes. And so that I definitely felt like that kickstarted things. And then also just being involved in the first draft trade was a lot of fun. I kind of like threw it out to the group that I was like willing to trade my pick, and was listening to offers, and had Alex, Rob, and Troy all texting me, and was going back and forth and trying to play them off one another to get a little more value out of someone. And so it was just a lot of fun to like feel like a little bit like an NFL GM there for a second. On draft night.
That was well executed.
Yeah, that was fun.
And
so I was going to say, let's talk about those trades.
That was a great transition, because Nick and Troy trade grades. I have a quick answer. I mean, both benefited, both got players that they wanted. I give the trade to both sides of the equation A+, A+.
Yeah. I'm going to give, just because Troy had taken some guys that I wanted, and Nick traded back. So he was looking to get guys that maybe I wasn't looking at. I give Troy an A, and I give Nick an A-. And obviously I'm thinking about that trade still with Joe Burrow and Amon-Ra. But
that's actually the same grades, Cam, that I gave myself and Troy. Troy specifically told me he was hoping to get in front of Alex, because he thought Alex was going for Joe Burrow.
Which we found out was the case.
Yeah, exactly. So he navigated that perfectly, because he moved exactly into the spot where he needed to in order to get the guy that he was looking at. And I do think Burrow, St. Brown are 2 really good picks. Maybe Hunter Renfrow, being the third guy that he got from those 3 picks he acquired, a little bit weaker. But I also felt like I accomplished what I was looking for as well. I didn't love the skill position players who were on the board there, and I was looking at Russell Wilson, but felt like I could wait a little bit longer to get him. So trading back, getting Cooks, because Cooks was probably who I was going to take at that 5th round spot anyway. So I got him 5 picks later and was able to get Russell Wilson, and then get Freiermuth there at the beginning of the 8th round. I accomplished what I wanted to. So A for Troy, A- for me. I agree.
I think go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think if you look at this trade, and I think, maybe the casual fantasy observer might say, oh, that Hunter Renfrow pick is an X factor type pick. I think the Hunter Renfrow pick actually isn't as sexy now as it was maybe last year, because I think there's a lot more mouths to feed in Vegas. I like that. I mentioned I like that Freiermuth pick earlier. I think that Pratt Freiermuth is actually the X factor in that trade. I think he's going to be the person who really sweetens that deal for you.
I think Hunter Renfrow is the definition of talent doesn't always equal production, because you hear it around the league. Defensive backs specifically say Hunter Renfrow is one of the best route runners. He's the hardest to guard, but he doesn't have the production. And now that Devontae Adams is there, it's going to take away from the share, I guess, the equity. So that's kind of my thoughts on Hunter Renfrow specifically regarding that trade.
And Skip, how about your trade? What would you grade yourself and Mr. Moody there?
I didn't give it a grade just because I would argue it's almost inconsequential, the trade between me and Jason. So like, I just did it because I was moving up. I made picks that I probably would have made anyway. I would say it's inconsequential, so I couldn't really give out a grade.
Yeah, I gave you both Bs. I felt like neither one of you really like lost this trade, but you both probably got players who would have been available had you not made the trade in all likelihood.
Yeah.
So I felt like, to secure those guys at the spots where you were, well done. And you get a B for that, but I didn't feel like there was value added to either team based on the trade, which is why I didn't give you a higher grade.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I agree. I would say, C, just passing, it passes. I don't really know. I don't really totally understand the Jason picking the Titans there. I know Nick mentioned it on draft day, like they lose their middle linebacker for the year. Interesting pick there, but I think he just wanted to, that was the last defense picked in the draft. So it was an interesting pick, but it was interesting to see that he traded up to get Jameson Williams, who won't really be playing much in the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
All right, so we're nearly done here. Just a couple more topics. What's the matchup of two teams that you're most excited to watch this season?
Oh, matchup of two teams. I just wrote,
or any matchup.
Yeah, the team that I'm most excited to play against or see for the year would be Eric's team, because he's a new member.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, I've spoken to him in the past about fantasy football, and I've never seen a physical resume, but what I've heard about his fantasy resume is that he is very good at this game and what we have going. So I'm excited to see, and I'm excited to see how his team is, and also excited to play him. Yeah.
I'm excited to play Nick. Nick's back in the league for the first time in gosh, maybe 6 or 7 years. Excited. I think he's definitely a veteran. Even when he wasn't playing with us, he was playing in some form or fashion with Jordan's league. And then with the disintegration of the divisions and having just one kind of division that we're all playing in, I think Troy, just looking at my stats, has been one of the most unlucky teams based off the division over the past couple of years. So I'm excited to see how he does with their, just playing everybody, right? And there's no sort of division holding him back. So Nick and Troy.
I said Alex against Skip is the matchup that I'm most excited for. I want to see 4 tight ends against 3 defenses and what prevails there. Probably no two teams that stacked up on positions, more heavily than those two teams. So that'll be really intriguing to see if one of those prevails.
Yeah.
And then in terms of, who you think is going to do well in the playoffs, do you have a championship prediction? Who do you think will be heading to a WNBA game near them or taking a local ACT? Any thoughts on kind of, who makes the playoffs, who comes out of this, with a win or with an L?
Yeah, I think we mentioned the boomer bust team was Johnny. And so I think he's one of my championship favorites, because if it does work out, that team is just absolutely insane. And then I have also Eric as well, because it's the balance. So between those two, I'd say those two are the favorite, and then everybody else is kind of after that. But yeah, those two for sure.
The note that I have here for who's going to be taking the ACT, I have Willie, and I don't think it's close.
Oh yeah, yeah. I wouldn't even. That's why I didn't even mention. I thought that was the obvious one. I
don't necessarily think it's going to be particularly close. No hard feelings against Willie. I just think his strategy, I don't see it paying off in the long run. My champion favorite right now, if I had to, it's hard to say because everyone has a really solid draft after, before week 1, with the exception of maybe Willie. But my champion favorite is Jason right now. He's always a gamer in the league. And then Colin and Troy, I think, are, the final 3 of the final 4 there.
Yeah, I had Skip and Wayne actually as my championship favorites. And I said Josh and Rob are sneaky picks, depending on how the season unfolds there as well. I actually went a different direction for the ACT. I think Johnny might be taking the ACT potentially. We talked about it, but I don't know about rolling with Kirk Cousins as your primary quarterback. I think you're likely going to have to go to the waiver wire there for somebody at some point. And that running back room really scares me for Johnny. So I think he could be in for a long season, but if not, potentially Willie. I agree with you as well. So any final thoughts here, or just get on to week 1?
I'm ready for week 1 for sure. I'm very excited about this year. Just random thoughts that are popping in my head now. I like a lot of the rookies. I think a lot of rookies this year could have very, big impacts on their respective teams. And so not only their actual team, but on our fantasy teams as well. Like these rookies can step up and be major players in our teams, major core players. But this should be an exciting year. I'm really looking forward to just get after it. I know we have still a few more days before week 1 or, Thursday night, but I'm just gearing up and so ready for it.
Yeah, I think there's the best energy we've had around this league in a couple of years. I think there's a lot of good energy around the league right now with the draft, 2 people joining, disintegrating the divisions. I think I'm really excited for the energy, and we're having the different scoring, right? Where like you can get an extra win if you beat the median for that week. I'm really excited about that.
And bidding, free agency bidding too as well.
Yeah, free agency bidding, we didn't even really touch on that, but I'm really excited to see people's strategy with that. The energy around the league is better than it's been in a couple of years. And I will say, I just wanted to touch on, you had mentioned the rookie room. I think 9 out of the past 10 years, a rookie running back has finished top 10 in PPR fantasy finishes. So I'm excited to see who that might be this year, if there is one. So, Brees Hall obviously is a good choice, but I want to see who else that might be. And I think my dad's team benefits from that too.
Well, this was a lot of fun. We'll check back in a few weeks and see how the beginning part of the season has unfolded.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Yeah.
See you soon.